Thank you. So my name is Helen Lacey, and today we will be doing Webinar Wednesday on creating digital narratives using the Smart Learning Suite. And our moderator today will be Crystal. If you have any questions during the course of the session today, please use the expand questions section and put your hand up to ask any questions, and we'll also save some time at the end for you to ask questions at the end. So today is all about teachers using digital narratives in their classroom using their smartboards, and particularly the feature set in the Smart Learning Suite and how they create digital narratives. So I'm going to show you some examples of things that teachers have actually done in the classroom, and I'm actually then going to show you after each page how you would create those lessons or those activities using the Smart Learning Suite itself. So just a reminder, if you're not familiar or you've forgotten, what is the Smart Learning Suite? Well, Smart has changed significantly, and we now have what we call the Smart Learning Suite. Smart Learning Suite has Smart Notebook, which is that old familiar content creation resource that you can see on my page just here, that has evolved significantly over time, and lots of the things I'm going to show you today have been created in Smart Notebook. It includes Smart Lab, which is the gamification piece where students and teachers can create games and activities. It includes Smart Response, which is a formative and summative assessment for teachers to do on the fly in the classroom or prepared in advance. And it includes Smart Amp digital workspace, which is a collaborative digital space. So today, most of the things that I'm going to show you are based on the two Smart Notebooks and Smart Lab activities. But the big thing we want to demonstrate and show today is about the Smart Learning Suite as well. And the big news is Smart Learning Suite is now online, and that might have huge implications for how we use Smart Notebook in the classroom. And today you'll see some of the activities from Smart Learning Suite online, or SLSO as we call it, but there will be future webinars that will cover this specifically. So let's start with some typical things that teachers would do in a classroom when they are creating digital narratives. And one of the key things that we see very often is teachers actually watching YouTube clips in the classroom as a narrative stimulus. So how this session will go is I will show you a page that a teacher has created. So this is a pretty simple page. This is a YouTube clip, The Silence Beneath the Bark, a very famous French film with no words, just music and visual. And this is often used in a K-6 classroom as a narrative stimulus for children to write stories and tell their versions of what they think is happening. So lovely, beautiful illustrations in this particular thing, this particular video. And so what I will be doing today is I'll actually be showing you how to do this. How do you actually put a YouTube video into Smart Notebook? So we'll stop the beautiful video that we have going on here, which is The Silence Beneath the Barks. And I'm going to create a new page. And I'm going to show you that when I create a new page, I'm going to go to the add-on tab, the little puzzle piece at the corner of my Smart Notebook software. And I'm going to click on YouTube, and I'm going to search for the Edge of the Forest, it was called, I'm pretty sure. I've lost it already. The Edge of the Wood. The Edge of the Wood, I think it was. I'm going to have to, sorry, I've already forgotten what it was called. I've got to go back to remember what it is. Apologies for that. It was called The Edge of the Forest. So I can find it really quickly then once I've seen it. So The Silence Beneath the Bark. There you go. Okay, so we're looking for The Silence Beneath the Bark. So I go onto the puzzle piece. I'm going to search for The Silence Beneath the Bark. So The Silence Beneath the Bark. Beneath the Bark. There it is. And once I find it, I actually see several videos that have been made of this, but the one I want is this Joanna Lurie video. So I can click on it and watch a preview if I choose to use a preview, but I know that's the video I want, so all I need to do is to add video. And that video is now going to add itself to my new page within Smart Notebook. And I can use the toolbar at the top to move the video, and I can use the little handle in the right-hand corner, the little grey handle down here, to actually resize my video to fit my page. And as you will have noticed, as soon as you have a YouTube video within Smart Notebook, the adverts are going to be removed, because you're actually doing a white hat search, first of all, for safe search, and secondly, you're removing all the adverts within the Smart Notebook software. So very frequently, lots of teachers will use YouTube as a narrative stimulus, and this is an example of one of those. Okay, so moving on to other examples, another big usual or very frequently found instance is where a teacher has actually found an image in a book, and they're using that image in the book as a stimulus for creating a narrative. And this was a class that were learning about fairy tales and traditional stories, and they've used Anthony Brown's Into the Forest. So if I am searching for Anthony Brown Into the Forest, I can find these images, and we all know how to do safe images and find images that we are allowed to use. And once we have found the image and we know that it's a safe image that we can use our screen capture button. So I'm going to create a new page again so that you can see this, and I can use my screen capture button to capture the image that I want, and I can draw a square around the image, and it will say, do you want to send this to your current page in Notebook? And I can say yes, and if I open my Notebook page up, you can see that I've actually got this image that I've captured from the internet. Now, once you have your image, or you've found your image that you want to put into the forest, the skills that I'm going to show you here are using the magic pen. So if I select the pen here, this is very typical of what people might want to be doing when they're writing a story. I'm selecting the magic pen, and I can look to see if we can find fairy stories. So the magic pen does magic things. And the first thing it does is it creates a spotlight. So we could be looking for clues to tell us about fairy tales using the spotlight. The second magic thing that the magic pen does is if I draw a square, it gives me a magnifier. So we could really be asking questions of, what is this? What is this object? I've not seen this object before. I want to zoom in on it even more to see what a spindle actually is. And the third thing is I can write, and I might be telling them that there's a clue here that Rapunzel is around here. And as I write on the board, magically the ink is going to disappear afterwards. So great story narratives, or looking carefully, or using images to tell stories within the Notebook software there. Okay, so one of the occasions where I've seen in some classrooms, some of the teachers have actually wanted the students to recreate just that digital narrative in the same exact way. So how they've done this is they have screen captured this image of the woods and resize this image so that the image is large on the page, and then they have locked the image in place. So when we're thinking of the smart skills to do this, I'm going to be showing you using locking paste, using gallery objects, properties, and image transparency. So we can see that on this recreated version of Anthony Brown's Into the Wood, I've got the big bad wolf, and I can see Jack and the cow there, and a pumpkin here, and Red Riding Hood, and we've even got student content into here. So what the students have actually done is they've searched in the gallery to add these images into their page. So if I use the gallery tab, which is the second tab down on my Smart Notebook, and I search into the gallery fairy stories, fairy tales maybe, I'm going to find in the gallery a folder full of goodies, and that folder is going to give me some fairy tale information or pictures, so 42 pictures that I can use in my Smart Notebook software. So let's take Mama Bear, and Mama Bear is taken out of the gallery. I'm going to resize her, and I want to hide her so I can use my Spotlight tool to retell my digital narrative. At the moment, she looks pretty obvious in that picture, so I'd like to make her fade like these other objects have. So I'm selecting the object, I'm going to properties, and I'm sliding my object transparency across to make Mama Bear more transparent. And then when I've done that, Mama Bear is hiding into the background, and I can perhaps hide her into the woods, and then the students can actually recreate their own digital narrative, or even import and use their own images. So let's see how we do that. So another way of using digital narratives is obviously for students to actually create their own work and add their own images into stories that they're telling digitally. So this was a group of students who had created characters from Aesop's fables that they were studying in the class, and what we want to do is we want to take the lion and create a story, a digital narrative with the lion with a background to tell how retell an Aesop fable story. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually use that camera tool cropping icon. Now, some of you may not have that camera capture tool in your toolbar. So if you notice that your Smart Notebook page doesn't look quite like mine, that's because you're able to actually customize your toolbar, and you can choose other things that you use frequently to be in your toolbar. So we might decide that I'm going to use copy frequently, and I'm just going to add copy into my toolbar just there, and now I've got a completely customizable toolbar. So you might find that your capture icon is not there. You just need to right click onto your toolbar and customize your toolbar. Okay, so I'm going to cut out this lovely lion that a student of mine has drawn by using the cropping tool that looks like the map of Australia, and I'm going to draw carefully around the lion that the student in my class has drawn. And once I've done that, it's going to say to me, what would you like to do with that lion? Send it to my current page in Notebook. Well, that's what I've done. Now, I actually want to move him onto another page. So I've created a new page, and I'm going to drag him from this page into my new page within Smart Notebook software. And I can see that my lion is just here. And what I'm going to do with my lion is I'm going to resize him because he's a bit too big. So I'm using that handle to resize him in the corner, and I'm going to rotate him using the green handle. And I also want to set image transparency. So I've got lots of white around my lion, and I want to get rid of that white that's around my lion. So I'm almost removing all the white around him. So I've got my lion on my page. I also then, I'm going to search the internet and find some background images that I really like. I like this one as an image for my lion to be in my story. So I'm going to drag this background into my page that I'm working on. And I'm going to resize this background. And as I resize this background, I think I might actually crop it. So I'm going to use my cropping tool again, and the students can obviously do this on their devices if they choose to do so, or the computers at the back of the room, whichever works. And I'm going to create a hill kind of image on my cropping tool there. Okay, and I want it on this page. But what I also want is I want to get rid of my first image. So I'm going to delete my first image, and I'm going to bring this image up so it looks like a mountainside that my lion's going to climb on. Now, before I do anything with this, I can see that my lion, I'm actually going to lock it in place. So if I just, sorry, I'm going to just set some image transparency here as well, just to get rid of my extra bits up here that I don't want. I don't want those. And my line is going to slide behind the mountain, which is what I don't want it to do. So what I'm actually going to do to my lion is I'm going to make my lion come to the front. So I go drop down menu to order and bring my lion to the front. Once I've brought my lion to the front, I now can have my mountainside, and my lion is going to go over my mountainside to tell my story. Okay, so now what I have are two pictures. So there's one that I've done in advance and one that I've just created with you with today's date and time, and one that I did previously with some students in my class where we're going to move the image. But what we're actually going to do to create a story over 2 pages is that I'm going to show you how to use the smart recorder. And using the smart recorder allows us to create almost an animation that will allow us to transition between 2 pages. So what I'm actually going to do is, using the little toolbar at the bottom, I'm going to bring up the on-screen menu from my smart icon in my system tray at the bottom, and I'm going to use the smart recorder. And the smart recorder is going to float over the top of everything that I do. So I don't want to have the smart recorder in my story, so I'm going to move it over to the right. And I'm actually going to choose a window to record that I would like to record on. So actually I'm going to use this one second. I'll start on this page. And the window that I would like is this window. So I'm going to select the window. And as I select the window, I've started to record. You can see the recording is starting. So I'm moving the lion and I'm telling the story as the students would in the class. They might be doing this on the smartboard, at the smartboard. I've changed the page and I'm telling all about the girl moving down the mountain. Now, when I press stop, it's created a small WMV file. It's asked me where do I want to save it. I can save it on my desktop or wherever it is that's useful for me. It's going to create a little video that takes a few minutes, and then I'm going to play you back the video. And what will actually happen is that little smart recorder has actually recorded my voice and my action. So here I was showing you how the lion was moving up the mountain on one page, and then I'm going to transition seamlessly over to the next page where I'm telling another story. And so students often tell digital narratives like this in their classroom. And in fact, I've just got one that I prepared a little earlier with Lottie.
And the fox and Aesop fable were told by me. My name is Lottie. There once lived a very old lion, so old that his teeth and claws were worn and blunted with age, and so slow that in a race a turtle could win, going as fast as he could. I can no longer catch my prey. What can I do, said the lion. So he came up with the most cunning plan, that this is what it was and how he did it. Whoever came past, he would tell them that he...
So great storytelling here, retelling the image. And I've actually seen a class where they've used the smart recorder to actually, each student in the class telling one chapter of the story with one page of notebook, and the whole entire class creating a digital narrative of what they'd learnt, and it being one great movie, class movie that the students have made at the end. So smart recorder, absolutely brilliant for creating digital narratives in the classroom. Other things we've seen are teachers who've actually used smartboards as green screens. So being able to resize the image to fit the page, and once they resize the image to fit the page, so there you go, using the smartboard as the background and retelling a story as a green screen, as a digital narrative. And all that was done there was choosing your image and, oh sorry, I keep opening, and resizing your image accordingly to be able to retell that story. We've also seen the use of 3D objects as a really good writing stimulus, where the students can come along and really take a good look at a castle and decide that they want to add a label because their story is going to take place in a specific place within the castle. So if I wanted my story to add on here, I'm right-clicking on the window and I'm adding a label. And what I'd actually like to do is I would like to say that this is going to be in the barred window. Okay, so window with bars, and some of my story might take place in that window with bars, and I can drag my text into the barred window. We've got the tall tower and the creaky wooden door, and the students might use this to add as many labels as they can to an object seen from multiple angles, to be able to use that as a writing stimulus. So how did we create that? We actually did, if I create a new page just here, and I go to the gallery and I search 3D images in the gallery here, I can find something that was relevant to what I am studying or looking for. And once I've got my 3D images, oops, sorry, 3D, let's go 3D instead, or 3D objects rather, that's what they are. And once we find, oops, I've gotten 3D in there, that's, sorry, apologies for that, 3D objects. Once we've searched for the 3D objects, we can find an object really quickly, or we can actually go to the 3D Trimble warehouse. So we got a fish dissection here, and we're able to label these objects in the way that we want. So we choose whatever we want to be able to choose, and we can add a label on it by clicking on it. And if we hold it down for 3 seconds, we add labels, and we can do things just that way. So it could be another writing stimulus, probably not a fish dissection. And then other kinds of things that we've seen in secondary classrooms is that point that we're talking about all the time about adding gamification, adding choice and chance, and giving students tic-tac-toe style choice boards where they can choose which of the items that they want to actually do to earn a number of points within their section. So this was in a secondary setting where they were looking at poems, and the students had some choices, and they could choose which of these things that they wanted to participate in class. So the smart skill in that is actually using tables and settings cell shades. So to be able to do that, I'm going to create a new page to show you. And just here in the top bar, I have a table toolbar, and that table was 3 by 3. So I'm coloring in, oops, I missed doing that. I'm going to do it again for you. I'm coloring in 3 by 3 cells here. And I'm dragging those cells into the page, and I can move using the square handle just at the top. And then to move the table, I actually just need to drag the lines into the size that I actually want them to be. So I choose the little red handles and I choose how big I want my table to be. And then within my table, I could do anything. So I might write some text and add the text into the table. I might choose an image. So I might just get a really very simple image from my gallery, and I might add that to the table. So I can add anything I choose to. It could be obviously this narrative stimulus if I wanted the narrative stimulus in the table, and then to add a cell shade. On each of the table sections, you've got a little drop-down menu here, and if you click on the drop-down menu, you can add a cell shade, and then you've got that chance element being brought into your tic-tac-toe kind of tables. Okay, other things that we've seen for narrative writing in classrooms would be things like up-leveling with ink editing, so using the ink editing pen. So just here in the pen section, we've got a text pen, and the text pen allows us to do these things that we can see here. We can replace text, delete text, insert text, and insert spaces. So the students might be up-leveling their writing, and one of the things that they might do is they might decide that they don't want him to have paws like a bear, but perhaps to have paws like a monster. So I'm going to choose the word monster, and I can replace the text on the fly by circling it. I can add more text if I wanted to. Bear like mean claws. I can add into the text, and I can create an extra gap by doing a line down, or delete things by actually just putting a line through it. So instant up leveling on your smartboard straight away using the text editing pen. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to some of the activities that we use in Smart Lab. All of the things that we've just shown you are things that you can do within Smart Notebook, and now I'm going to show you some of the things that we've seen in Smart Lab. And one of the key Smart Lab activities that we see very frequently used in schools is the lab activity. Sorry, I just need to go back to my pointer here. The lab activity Shout It Out. So this was an activity in a classroom where the teacher was encouraging show, not tell. There was a trait and she wanted the students to articulate an action and actually to demonstrate inference in narrative. So we had two traits. Edgar was weak and the spoilt princess was rude, and the students had to demonstrate how they could articulate this in an action. So Fleur here had written that Edgar was feebly trying to lift his sword into the air, and he struggled up the mountain pulling his shield with all his might. So that's really demonstrating an action. So how the students actually approached this was they could instantly get feedback on whether or not they were showing an action. So they'd done lots and lots of work in the class showing the difference between traits and actions, and this was a demonstration of their understanding using Shout It Out. So this was created, and I'm going to show you how to create it by creating a new page. And after we've created a new page, I'm going to click on the Smart Lab icon, and then I'm going to choose the Shout It Out activity. And this Shout It Out activity had two traits. Edgar was weak, Edgar was weak. Edgar was weak, and the other one was the spoilt princess was rude. Okay, so we've got the two traits. And I've created my game instantly. So now I would like the students to use their devices in their classroom and actually give me an answer to this. So instantly when I've created a new page, excuse me, my teacher ID has come up. So my teacher ID is associated with my login. So my number is 8308130. The students would go to classlab.com, and I'm just going to show you how this works here today, and we'll have a go of doing this at the end. But when the students have gone to classlab.com, and I'm doing that on my device right now, then they put in my teacher code, which is 8308130, and they will be given and I'm going to click start here. They will be given 08130. Sorry, they will be given. And I'm going to join. So I'm Helen. I'm just joining on my device here, and you're going to see that I've joined. And once I've joined, I can then add a contribution. So I might decide that he couldn't lift his sword. Okay, lift his sword. And once I've done that on my device, I am then able to send that response, and it instantly comes back. So Class Lab is really great for engagement with students when you want to demonstrate learning on the fly, where you are encouraging the students to instantly get feedback on whether or not they can demonstrate inference in this narrative here like this, by giving them a Class Lab opportunity for them to type in their version of an action onto this device. So other kind of Smart Lab activities we've done, we've got one here that was created by a student. So the teacher in this particular scenario was actually giving strategies for the class to start with a verb or a preposition. So she'd done lots of work in advance with the students about actually starting sentences with verb and prepositions. And this activity actually just involved the students going away on their devices and actually creating a sentence and then creating it in a game-like way using the Smart Lab fill in the blank. So again, really easy to do this. You create a new page, you go to Smart Lab, you choose your fill in the blank activities, you type in your content. So in this instance, it was the students typing in their story that starts with a preposition or a whatever else the teacher wanted. They choose which words they want to highlight. They had no background in that particular instance, and they've created a game for the rest of the class to play on the smartboard. Really easy for them to do that, and they get feedback should they choose to do so. Another student example here, and I know that we're rushing through really quickly, but this is that thing of reinforce the learning and doing it several times. So this particular student said, I'm finished, and the teacher said, okay, well, go and create us a game that shows us that you understand about personification. And so the student was able to go and collect objects, and then they were going to match the personification of that object. So the stairs groaned as we walked on them, so that's a pair, and they've created this game, and then the other students in the class get to play that game. So they've reinforced the learning 3 times. One of the other activities, and I know I'm really rushing because we're nearly at the end here, but one of the great activities I've seen using Smart Lab was a teacher who wanted students not to use said, walked, and looked in their narratives again. And so this activity was the teacher had actually asked one of the students to go and create as many synonyms as they possibly could for said, walked, looked, and walked. And then what the teacher did, once this had been made, the teacher was able to push this content using the Smart Class Lab app, like Class Lab functionality, to their devices. So all the students in the class had this set of cards on their desk while they were writing their narrative. And if they came across the word walked and they didn't want to use the word walked again, they could turn these cards over and have an alternate way. And what we also noticed, an interesting spelling from some of the students there, was that nobody actually had the same pair of cards next to each other. So they all had a different card to be able to write their narrative in that setting. Right, really quickly, other things that we could be using within Smart Notebook to encourage that gamification or that chance or that stimulus to writing are things like the Smart Dice. So Smart Dice are found in the gallery, and once you've looked in the gallery and you've searched for dice, you're able to bring them into the page, and once they're in the page, they look a little like this. And they've got the regular kind of dice icons, dots on the front, but you'll notice that you've got a little settings toolbar here, and you can actually change the dice to have in it anything that you want. So you could be putting text in there and changing this to be a word, or you could be putting some images in there, and just so that you know, any images you gather from the gallery, you can actually drag and drop them into the dice, and then they will stay in the dice and look a little bit like this when you're using the dice activity. So this particular teacher in this activity, excuse me, had done the dice as a writing stimulus. This is the one that I'd like to finish on most importantly. And what they've done is then done a shout it out. And so they had actually got the dice and had a kangaroo and a book for blue group was the answer, and the kangaroo and a cave for blue group rather, and a kangaroo, an elephant and a book for red group, and the green group got a kangaroo and a vortex. And why this one is so powerful is this, and watch out for this right up on our blog, this were 3 groups that were given a random stimulus to write their narrative. The first round of answers in this particular section, you can see that the students had very simple answers to the stimulus, which was an elephant in a book. or a simple answer to the elephant and the kangaroo, or a very simple answer to Flash. And when all three of them saw what the other people had done, the teacher was able to say, well, actually, Flash is a really good start. Maybe we should be using a sound or a noise or something to start our sentences. So they wanted to have these sizzling starts to their narratives. And so the next round, they actually reflected on their learning, and some of the others took on thump, thump, thump and Flash, or they improved their sentences. And by the third roundition of what the teacher had done, you can see how this was visible learning. The start was simple, but the progression for the students, understanding the students learning because they were looking at what their peers were doing and improving their sentences, was immediate learning. And this was a huge breakthrough in this classroom because it didn't mean that the teacher had to go away, edit the narrative, get the students to write it again, give them feedback, maybe even take it home to do homework. This was on the fly, visible learning, and they could see immediately their progression to their sizzling starts in the story. So really excellent thing that was happening in that particular classroom. So I know we're 5 minutes over, but just to let you know, we have other professional learning on the website, and obviously keep an eye on our smart technologies ANZ, and look on the website for all of our webinars and future webinars we have available for there. And before we ask you any questions, I'd like to ask you, before you ask us any questions, I'd like to ask you a question. So if you're logged on, please could you go to classlab.com, and would you put in my teacher code, which is 83081300, and I would like you to give us some feedback. So what did you learn from this webinar, and what will you use in your settings? So please give us some feedback from your internet enabled device. And as you're doing that, I will ask Crystal if there are any questions or were any questions in the webinar that I can answer, but please feel free to give us any feedback or any information on how you are going to use what you saw in the webinar today right now by joining classlab.com 83081300 and turning your names off, so all your contributions will be anonymous. Crystal, was there any questions?
Hi, Helen. No, not at this stage. It looks like you've been you've covered just about everything. I'll give it one more minute just while you're getting some feedback there.
Great. Okay, well, thanks for your time today, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you next week's webinar. Will be one of our Smart Certified trainers, Molly, and she will be doing a session on using Smart Learning Suite online in a languages setting. Thanks very much for that. Bye.